All right. It is, I will ignore him now. It is Thursday, May 21st, 2020, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. And music plays. I'll put that in. All right. Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, coming to you from a socially distanced, safe, quarantined location. This time we're doing it at my home. First time I've ever done the show from my home, so we'll see how this goes. We'll see if we have screaming children. I think the likelihood of us hearing my children is extremely high. About a 50% chance one of them will come running in, likely naked at some point as well. So we'll see how that does. Good time to go with some video on this one. Anyway, I am Chris Quinn. I am the host of the Insiders Roundtable. Thanks all of you guys for tuning in, and thanks as always to Lumpen Radio for having us on. The show will air on Lumpen Radio, although it was not broadcast right now, but nonetheless, thanks to the fearless leaders of Lumpen Radio, Misters Jamie Trecker and Logan Bay, for having us on all these times. And thanks to everyone out there who is listening, whether you are watching us online or via podcast or listening to us over the airwaves. I don't know how many of you are actually doing that these days, but you never know. But thank you nonetheless. For those tuning in for the first time, welcome. Interesting time to come on and join this show. But this is the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. Essentially, it is me trying to recreate some of what I love best about the beer, being in the beer industry and just about beer, which is gathering groups of people whose opinions I respect and admire and just talking about issues that are affecting us day in and day out. And with that, I will get to my guests. But before I do, I want to mention that their opinions are solely their own and are not affiliated with any other entities, such as Lumpen Radio or anything like that. And with that, I will get to my guests. Now, I always introduce my guests in order of seniority. That does not change. So I'll just talk a little bit while the senior member gets ready, takes a toothpick out of his mouth, starts talking. One of the original Dust Brothers, Mr. Eric Kapraun. What's up, dude? Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here.
Yeah, at your house. It's great to be in your home.
Yeah, it's great to be here, seeing other people's faces. I love it. I haven't left here much in the past 2 months, so these video calls are kind of, the norm for us now. So
yeah, they're something. What's new with you, man?
Not a whole lot. Besides not working in craft beer anymore. Other than that, everything's pretty normal.
Yeah. Right. Right. It's. I'm guessing most of the people, a lot of the people who listen to this show, I think most of the people know you and have known you for a long time. You've been coming on the show since the very beginning. I would have to say you're one of the crowd favorites.
Oh man.
Yeah, and but yeah, it's you're not with Half Acre directly because of COVID, right?
Yeah.
So you can finally badmouth them now.
Yeah. I have so many friends and that still work over there. So the first thing I want to do is just talk a lot of crap about them. No. So I don't know how many people know this kind of thing. I'm not going to go into everything, but my role at Half Acre for the past few years has been to create events and to kind of oversee everything that Half Acre did that had to do with beer festivals that we would participate in, both locally, nationally, internationally, and then putting on events of our own, beer festivals, et cetera, and then kind of managing our tour program and our in-store sampling program and all those types of things. All of those things have completely disappeared off the
For
face
everyone.
of the earth.
Yeah.
Right. And there's really no idea if or when that is going to return. So my position was eliminated, which makes total sense from a business standpoint. And here we are.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. We talked about this a little bit beforehand. It's not like I'm finding this out right now. And, I think Eric and I, well, certainly I think Eric a little more begrudgingly. I thought it was just a very real thing for people who have been listening to this show the show's been on for a long time, dude. It's almost 4 years. It's kind of scary. Yeah. And they've probably been listening to you for 4 years.
I'm sorry.
To now, have a, it just kind of brings some of this stuff home, I think, for maybe people who, hear about this stuff, but, you and so many people that we know are directly affected by it. You're not the only person in your position. There's tons and tons and tons of people like that. So thanks for coming on. And, yeah, man. I mean, I don't know really what else to say.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
No,
that's a good one. I have
it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
My hope and plan is to continue working in this industry and everything. And that there will be a time for that. And I'm sure we'll get into all that in a little bit here, but
I'm drinking out of my Forest and Maine glass.
Sweet.
Which you didn't introduce me to them, but you were an early adopter. That was an awesome look, Libby, by the way. I know that look spoke 1,000 words. It was great. The look of death right there. Anyway.
This is why.
Yeah.
What's the matter?
Hey, what's up? Whoa.
I don't know what's going on.
Beard. What's going on, man? How are you?
Let's not take away from Eric right now.
Yes.
No, it's all good. I'm done.
It's okay. I don't know who's next. Who's been on the most? I don't know. How many times you've been on, Chris?
4 times, 5 times, something like that.
I think so. Libby, you go next. I've never done a show at Chris's place of employment, so you get the nod. Tie goes to you. Okay. What's up with you, Libby? How are you?
I'm tired. I'm good.
Yeah.
I just finished my shift doing to go and curbside, showered quickly and ran to here. So
yeah.
I'm
Thank
good.
You. Yeah.
Eric, I want to give you a huge shout out. I remember meeting you at a Great Taste of the Midwest.
Yeah.
I got a really good story about Eric at the Great Taste.
Yeah. This was after hours. I don't know. We were by the Best Western and saw somebody. I was like, "Hey, we bought cans off of you." And hey, yeah, it was just a really good moment. And I'm really sorry about the furlough.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. I mean, I'm mostly sad about the Great Taste in the Midwest, if I'm being honest. That's the best festival.
I know. Such a bummer. Such a bummer.
I mean, I think we'll get into that a little bit later in the show about beer festivals. Chris, you mentioned it. But I mean, good or bad, some of the best people I've ever met, including yourself, have been at beer festivals. So, but anyway, we're hanging in there. I'm doing good.
I think everything's qualified. I mean, when I ask the question, when everyone asks the question, how are you doing? I think there is a huge, qualifier there, all things considered.
Yeah, we're hanging in. We're hanging in. I mean, that's like everybody's.
I think that's really the most you can hope for. Well, thanks for taking time, and I appreciate you coming on and letting just giving your input. It's always great to have you guys on, and you've been. It's so funny. Like your second shift is considered to be like, it's almost considered like a Chicagoland brewery. But yeah, but nobody else. No, it's because you guys are so kind of ingrained in the beer culture here in Chicago. My next guest is Mr. Chris Furnari. How are you?
I am doing pretty good, all things considered.
Right.
So actually I got a sweet backdrop now because I just moved. So I have
Nice.
more space for activities and Zoom calls, I guess.
Yeah, that's a very good. You have the best backdrop. I was gonna do some like background back screen thing, but I forgot to do it. And then now people are texting me that they can only hear me on Twitch. So what I'm gonna do is just whenever you guys talk, I'll immediately repeat exactly what you said, and then it'll go really well.
Yeah.
But anyway, but you're in Boston, right?
I'm just outside of Boston now. So yeah, probably about 30 minutes north, next to Salem, actually. I'm in Marblehead.
Okay.
And yeah, that was a little crazy moving during a global pandemic. But yeah, I got it done, and here I am. I'm still alive.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. Let's get right into it. So is there anything you guys have been drinking lately, or is there anything that you guys are excited to be drinking? Maybe, well, whatever that means. Anyone can go first. In fact, you know what? I'll go first because there's a beer that I was supposed to be drinking right now. That I forgot to bring home because I always just assume I was going to do it at the shop. And that's the Dunkel from Second Shift that just came out. What's it called?
New Flame.
New Flame.
New Flame.
And I saw it come
name.
in today, and I was doing the receiving, but I hadn't ordered it. I hadn't been told about it. And I said, I got it. I was in a room all by myself, and whatever the new beers are there, they bring them in so I can get the barcodes and yada, yada. And I looked at it and I was like, New Flame, Dunkel Lager. Fuck yeah. And just like shouted that out to nobody. Maybe the only person in the world who would see a Dunkel Lager come out and get genuinely excited about it and be genuinely bummed that I forgot to take it home. But that's awesome that you guys are doing that. I really am looking forward to drinking it, and I hope I really like it. So
awesome. I hope you do too. It's our first exploration into the Oslo yeast, actually. It was
what's that? Oslo yeast? What's that?
It's a yeast. It's a Nordic yeast that propagates really quickly.
That one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is terrifying because lagers
like 3 days, right? Like really fast.
Like we put it at 80 degrees and it didn't propagate. We had to dump a batch type of, like, we put it at 98 for 3 days, and that's when it finally took off. It's a terrifying new anyway. I'm obviously not the brewer. My husband is, and him trying to explain to me about how this is going to be a good thing and trying to experiment with it was really terrifying. But we ended up dumping 3 or 4 batches because we really weren't happy with them. But we finally found a happy medium, and I'm really happy that you are getting to try it. We're pretty happy with the outcome. We're only using 2 different beers with that yeast. The rest of our lagers are traditionally lagered. But.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that it was using that Oslo yeast. That's the one I believe from Omega. And I was on this yeast panel. Kind of a funny story. Goose Island invited me to sit down on a panel with to talk about like yeast. So I was like, oh, okay, it's fine. It was a room full of people, and it was me, the head brew pub brewer, the owner and founder of Omega Yeast, the like head of R&D and QA at Great Central, who is a PhD in like yeast biology, and yeah, and me. And I was like, what do I possibly have to add to this? There were 2 PhDs there, and then like dipshit right here who's like, yeah, I don't know. But Lance was talking about that yeast, and it sounded like you do everything you're not supposed to do if you want it to turn out right.
Yeah.
Michael, like rip. Yeah.
Exactly. Michael Graham of Austin Beer Works and I were chatting recently. I sent him a care package. He sent me one back, and he was talking about some of the beers I sent him. And he really liked the new flame, and I told him that we had been using the Nordic yeast, the Oslo yeast.
Cool.
And he's basically like, yeah, you have to take every notion you know about brewing and just put it aside, like just understand that this is a different way, and maybe it is different from what you're used to, but just kind of go with it and
just trust it, I guess. Yeah,
exactly. It took us a few times. Actually, the Oslo yeast that we used was from Bootleg Biology in Nashville.
Okay.
Shout out to Mark from Omega. They're also equally as awesome. We've used different of that Nordic yeast strain from them, but the Oslo came from Bootleg. So
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Anyway, enjoy.
So that's mine. I'll let you know how it is.
Is the Oslo yeast different from the Quebec yeast?
It's a subsect of the Kvik yeast. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
So is the Oslo like the lager version? I'm just guessing.
They're all different lager versions.
Okay.
They're just, it's different. It's I'm going to probably get ripped to shreds for this just because of my limited. I think it's kind of associated with Brett. There's different branches of it. So it's Kvik, and Oslo just happens to be one of the most popular, easy to propagate.
Gotcha.
So.
And from what I had heard, Eric, like they found some essentially not home brewer, but like kind of pseudo home brewer up in, I don't know, maybe it was, I don't know where it was. Maybe it was in Oslo or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was what they'd been using for, forever essentially. And it's just was kind of the local yeast that they used, and it behaved very bizarrely. And they've brewed all sorts of beers with it. Omega tested it out and did like a 12 or 13% barley wine in 3 days and had no and it had like no fusel alcohol or anything like that. It's apparently it's clean. Like once it gets going, it just seemed kind of weird, but yeah.
I only homebrewed one batch of beer in my life, so I'm very qualified to talk about this, but I think that would be great for some, so ideal for something like home brewing, because you don't really have the same level of temperature control that you do in a commercial environment. So you could just throw that yeast in there and let it go, and probably going to turn out a lot better than it would in a traditional setting. So it's really cool.
What are you drinking, Eric?
I don't really, I gotta watch how I say this. I don't get as much free beer as I used to. So I've turned into a beer customer for the first time in almost a decade. And I've really only been drinking 2 beers, Bell's Two Hearted and Half Acres Bodum, which are 2 very different versions of IPAs, but they're my 2 favorite. I think that both of them are just incredible, and just a little bit of bang for your buck at like 7%. But somehow I got a can of Pilot Talk from Perennial. It's a hazy beer that they made. It actually says Methode Haze on the can, which
nice.
I really enjoy that. So
that's great.
So IPA is pretty much
Methode
nonstop.
Haze. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. No dust
Shout
in
out
your
to
life.
Chris. Well, I actually just got some dust today, and I'm going to drink some. It's going to be my next beer. So
in a trade, you only get it via trade nowadays, right?
Yeah, and I only do horizontals. Verticals are over.
Oh, okay. Got it. Horizontal. You're just doing horizontals of dust,
right? Yeah. So I'll do 6 cans at a time.
Got it. And just taste a sip from each,
right?
Just to see how the Citra really kind of.
And then you don't check the date codes, you check the minute codes, because then you can tell
what's the freshest.
This one came off this fill head, and then this one came off this fill head, and you can kind of see which one is the best.
This is the first shift. This is the second shift. This is the third shift.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. We just got some Modern Times in, and the Blazing World I was telling you. I think you would like that. It reminds me a little bit of Alpine Nelson. A little bit. It's not as bitter. It doesn't have that rye kick to it, but It is a West Coast IPA with Nelson, which is part of the way there. So
nice.
Anyway, how about you, Chris? What you been drinking or enjoying lately?
I mean, everything. I feel like there are no rules during the pandemic, so sometimes it's whatever Drizzly's able to deliver. Sometimes it's whatever's at the closest liquor store that is still open when I think to purchase beer. Tonight it's Harpoon Rec League, which is their like low alcohol, hoppy, hazy beer.
Okay.
But instead of, I guess, talking about specific beers, I would say that one thing that I've recently done is kind of get back into the growler game because of this whole thing. Actually from on-premise restaurants that were filling growlers.
Sure.
They got an exemption to sell alcohol to go. So, there were some, I would say, relatively like rare or, draft only type of products that they were sending out the door in growlers, and not usually a big growler guy, but hey, like I said, there's no rules in the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, we are certainly not big fans of growlers overall, certainly when compared to packaged beer, which we also sell. I understand if you don't really sell a lot of packaged beer, but yeah, all things are relative. Again, relatively speaking, I don't like growlers, but if there's a bunch of breweries here that are loaded down with kegs and are dying for somebody to try to take some kegs off their hands, and we have a draft system and people are interested in doing it, then by all means, yeah. Here's one thing that, well, we'll save it for later. Now, normally when we take a little station break, but we don't have to do that. So we'll get right into it. We're starting out with a light topic, which is, what will the next 3 to 6 months look like for on-premise? I win. Libby loses. The first child was not mine.
Sorry, I would have muted you.
No, I don't care. I don't care at all. Yeah. So just easy softball. I'll give it to you, Chris. Next 3 to 6 months. Just tell us what you see.
I mean, I think most states right now are starting the process of opening those things back up. I know here in Massachusetts, we're always, typically a little bit slower at everything. We took, almost 2 full years to open a dispensary after they were legal. So,
yeah. I heard there was one in the entire city, right? For you guys, or for a long time or something weird.
So we like to take our time. So phase 1 of our reopening here in Massachusetts begins on Monday, and restaurants are not included in that. I don't think they're able to go until phase 2, which is at least 3 weeks later. So, that should give you some idea of where Massachusetts is going to be at versus other places. And I got to be honest, like I really don't see, one, they're going to be limited in capacity no matter what. But even so, I really don't see a bunch of people clamoring to, get back on premise and get to the bars right away. I really think people are going to be a little bit skittish about, being around people after having been locked up, so to speak, for 3-4 months. So I think there's going to be a little bit of hesitation. And then, the real reason why you go to a bar or a brewery is kind of for the whole experience. And I think that's going to be really difficult to, provide the same experience that people had before, any time in the near future. Everything's going to be so different, getting temperatures checked and wearing masks and, what does that all feel like once you actually get
getting
inside?
Temperatures checked, it's going to be weird.
So I think quite honestly, like the whole experience of going to a bar is not going to be as fun. And so people might do it, try to get out there like right away and see what it's like and then kind of go back. Or people might just say, you know what, it doesn't seem like much fun, I'm going to stay home. That's just my take. That could, you know, obviously be completely wrong, but yeah, I don't see the on-premise being that much fun right away.
I don't know. I mean, I'm so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I agree that I don't think people are going to want to race to be there. I know here in Chicago or Illinois, rather, they're talking about doing outside first, which I was saying to some of the guys at the shop at the beer temple. It might be, you know, good from a safety standpoint, but it also might be a good like mental first like wave of people getting used to being at restaurants and like kind of dipping their toe in. Because if you just open them up, I would think that, people are going to be frightened and no one's going to know what to do. And I think it's going to be very awkward to start, but I could be wrong. I mean, apparently in Wisconsin, you know, the bars were packed like the first
Right.
day, but
well, I saw a
knows?
photo from Napa today. Some article about the bars opening up back in Napa, and it was like this guy, and he was eating like a burger or something, sitting at the bar, and they had these like plastic screens, you know, in front of each seat that were spaced out like 6 feet away, and presumably like the bartender's on the other side of the screen, although it wasn't in the photo. And he was like the only person in there, and it just looked like a really sad photo. And
Sounds sad.
yeah, and I was like, if this is what I'm going to a bar to experience, like I don't know if I'd almost rather.
Well, then
just
it's
stay
charity.
home.
Then it's charity. You know,
Yeah,
then you're just showing support, which is okay.
Right.
But it's not why you want to go. You don't want to go to a restaurant ideally because you're afraid that if you don't go and sit by yourself in front of a plastic partition, they will go out of business, and you don't want that to happen.
Right.
You want to go because you want to have a certain experience, and it's so weird. I don't know.
Libby, I mean, like, what are you guys planning on doing?
So I was hoping that Eric could respond first, because I have firsthand knowledge of like what is going on. Like I have pretty strong opinions, and I would like to hear Eric's opinion first before I kind of delve into it, because I have experienced the exact opposite.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was. What I was thinking is that I think that, you know, people are so itchy to be outside and be in public and be with their friends and, you know, touch stuff that's not in their house, for better or worse. And I think that, you know, you think about a normal patio season where there's nice weather, and as soon as that switch turns and it's nice, it seems like everyone just loses their minds, and all logic and rationale just go out the window. So I anticipate, you know, if you're going to have a lot of places in Illinois where it's patio only at first, I think that people are going to lose their minds to try to get those spots at those tables and do what they can to be drinking in public. I do think it you know, gives an opportunity for these bars and restaurants to at least like start to have people in some capacity, so they can also kind of like practice for if or when they're going to reopen their operation up full tilt, and kind of adjust to what things will look like until, I don't know, this is eradicated, which who knows if or when that's even going to be. So I think people are going to lose their minds and go out and pour as much beer into their face as they possibly can.
I mean,
once
I could
they're
see
able
that
to.
happening too.
Yeah, I mean, that's
whether or not that's the right thing. I mean, that's a totally different story. But
well, I mean, I guess counter. I guess I was thinking about how I would feel, but I do think that the people who are the most comfortable and will likely be the ones who come out and go to these places first are also the ones who may be more likely to not follow certain guidelines.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So I could see that. Oh yeah, is that okay? Is that what you have firsthand knowledge
that
of,
is
Libby?
what we have experienced. So our governor opened up the state this Monday, this past Monday, and even before then, we've seen people that have tried to come in. I mean, our brewery, the way that we're set up, it's pretty spread out, and we have pretty blatant signs like "Please do not park," "Please stay in your car," "Curbside pickup only," "Follow these signs." And there's people that blatantly disregard them. I mean, Sunday I had to tell a party of 20 that disregarded the signs, that drank warm beer in our parking lot, to please, they had to figure something out to go somewhere else.
A group of 20?
20. And
this was before or after the state opened?
This was before the state had opened. They opened up warm beers in our parking lot and thought it was okay to have a little get together. And
wow,
that's just it. Like, the people that are going to respect the stay-at-home orders, the people that are going to respect restaurant, breweries, any sort of hospitality industries, directions are going to follow them. But the people that aren't are going to people that ruin it for the rest of us, unfortunately. There's going to have to be some sort of order by our governor, because there's counties that the breweries are overrun, that they opened up Monday and nobody is respecting the stay-at-home orders. Nobody's respecting the mask orders.
Wow.
It's just really disappointing to me. Like, as a collective, we could get through this earlier if people just had a little bit of compassion for each other. But unfortunately, and like you said, this is just my own opinion, everybody has a little bit of spring fever and wants what they want. And we are going to hold off on opening at least until the fall, until we can at least understand some sort of happy medium. So
wow. Until the fall. Wow. Okay.
It's just what's responsible, unfortunately. We don't see declining numbers. There's no sort of vaccine in the near future. And
now, isn't it crazy? Sorry to interrupt you, but I can't. It's just hitting me in the face that all these businesses now have to be like epidemiologists, because there's no oversight and guidance as to, like,
we're self-policing at this point.
Yeah, it's
we
so
don't have
odd.
any. And
it's so odd.
I mean, it's not just us. I mean, there's other countries. If you look at, the UK for one, there was the notion put out there that just be responsible. Nobody really wants to take responsibility for what is going on as a
Eric's
worldwide
laughing,
pandemic.
yeah.
Like, what are we supposed to do? So we're all kind of on our own to do what's best, and a lot of us are getting shit. And you know what? I'll take it. If I'm gonna at least take care of, number one thing is, if I'm gonna take care of my staff, then screw you. So my staff is gonna stay safe. My staff is gonna stay healthy, and we're gonna do what we keep doing. And I 100% support your business when you come back in, and I will give you the biggest hug whenever I can. But this is just not right for us right now. So.
Well, was it Three Floyds that said that they were closing their tap room indefinitely? And I think it's Nick over at Three Floyds, right? I think he said something to the effect of, like, beer's not worth dying for, or something like that. And I thought that kind of, like, really brought it home and, like, grounded everything, where it's like, yeah, it's just at the end of the day, it's just a beer. And if there's not clear guidance, and things haven't declined to the point, if the infections haven't declined to the point where it's reasonably safe to open up, I think it's smart to just say, let's wait for the science, right?
Yeah, exactly. We can share beer, whether it be with you on premise. I mean, we operated as 7 years as a distribution only brewery. Like, bring it on. I really miss faces. I cry at the drop of a hat for people that I see on a regular basis, but we did this. I'm prepared to do it again. Like, it sucks, but it is what it is. So.
Really, people are upset about being told what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
And that was the case almost all the time when you're dealing with people who come into bars and restaurants and tap rooms. People think that they know what's best. And a lot of times they have blatant disregard for the rules, and that sucks because it does ruin it for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that, Nick Floyd having that, Dark Lord Day was supposed to be last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether or not that's like a huge revenue generating endeavor for them or not, but they pulled the plug on that pretty early on. And I think all he's really saying is, look, you can get our beer, you can still drink our beer, most of it. Maybe, Dark Lord Day is a bad example, but you can still drink this beer and you can drink it with your friends. You just can't do it at our pub. And we're sorry if that offends you. And what blew my mind, and I guess this is just my ignorance, is it offended a lot of people that were saying that they were not going to buy it. I mean, this is such a small minority, but so many people online saying that it was a sham, that Three Floyds would think that the science is what they should trust, and that they're no longer buying their beer anymore.
Those people are going to be offended or angered by something anyway. How much money are you actually? This happens in, I don't want to get too political, but like so many times, this is like what happens in politics. Like, you better do this or you're going to offend me and I won't vote for you. And it's like, dude, you weren't going to vote for him anyway. Or, it's like, how much Three Floyds? Oh, so you were a huge Three Floyd supporter and used to go to the brew pub all the time. But now because you can't, it's like, no, you didn't buy Three Floyds. You didn't go to the tap room. So nothing's going to change. You just have a way to vent your, anger at everybody is likely what happened. And what really kind of just frustrates me is I own a liquor store and a bar. I want to be able to. That's awesome. Also didn't lose. My child did not come on camera first. But I don't want to, and don't apologize. Stop apologizing.
Say hi, Anna.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
All right, keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
No,
she can hear it.
What I was going to say is, as a bar owner and a liquor store owner, I don't want to have to. I just want to be able to do what I'm told to do. You're allowed to open. Fine, we'll open. I can open on a patio. Fine, open on a patio. I don't want to have to think. Is the government not looking out for my best interest or not doing what's right? And that's just really frustrating to me that we have to take matters into our own hands. And even I don't know what I'm saying at this point. So.
No, you're fine. No, we do. Like, I mean, I think maybe a couple of you may have saw my political stance a couple of months before any of this went down about
which one?
Oh, I mean, this one was a pretty public one.
Okay.
Just about firearms and people that would have never visited our brewery in the first place, anyway, that's just it. People that want to have opinions about taking a stance against you are people that maybe would have never visited you in the first place. And a lot of people that I saw commenting on the Three Floyds stance about not reopening their brew pub are people that maybe wanted to visit in the next year or so. Probably didn't have any intention to, but if they happen to be in the area because it is Hammond, Indiana, well, mark that off my list. Well, okay, great. If you didn't, anyway. Sorry.
Until there's
slightest inconvenience.
Until there is another hype beer that they have to get. Yeah.
There's 20 seats in that tap room anyways. You guys aren't all going to get in anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
And Eric, you know as much as me, as soon as there's any sort of trade bait or whatever out there or check-in bait or whatever you want to call it, they'd be right back there. I mean,
yeah.
Come on.
Well, and I guess back to, sort of my point about bars and tap rooms being places where you have experiences. I guess it almost like kind of strengthens my argument as someone who is probably less interested in going to these establishments, not necessarily not supporting them, like I'd be more than happy to go to a brewery and pick up a 4-pack of beer or whatever it is. But if for years breweries and bars, the entire, history of time, but tap rooms, especially in recent years, have really sold themselves on come and have this experience at our establishment. And that you cannot get that same experience now. And we have no idea when that experience will return, or even if it will return in the same exact form. So, for me, I wouldn't even be mad in a situation where somebody said we're not opening up, because I'm not going to get the same experience anyway. And that's that's half the reason why you go to a brew pub or a tap room, is for the ambiance and the experience and being with your friends and talking, striking up conversation with strangers, and all the trappings that come along with being on premise. It's kind of gone now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it is.
What? I'm really curious what breweries that I've kind of like tuned out. So I really feel like I'm the worst person to be on this podcast. But what do breweries that are like 95 to 100% own premise, what have they been doing to adjust? Do a lot of them just shift to curbside and they just lose that draft business and they just put everything into cans? I'm really curious about places like Treehouse, Trillium, Other Half in particular.
I know.
And I'm woefully ignorantly, like not paying attention. So I'm sorry for asking.
I know.
Trillium started delivering. So they just do direct delivery now, and they have different areas of Greater Boston that they deliver to on specific days. I don't even know if it's like fully legal for them to be doing that. They have they've always self-distributed, but going direct to consumer.
Oh, they're going direct to consumer delivery.
Yeah.
That's.
I guess their lawyer told them it was okay because they've been doing it. So
I love. You got to love them. They're like, you know what? Might not be legal, but I'm taking that margin.
Right.
I don't care what it is. I'm doing on premise.
The bar, or excuse me, the breweries that I worry about are the ones that didn't have any packaging capabilities or very limited packaging capabilities, because you can't just like, oh, we lost all our draft business, I'll just shift everything into cans. Like
straight up brew
if you don't have a canning line,
Right.
Well, there's a lot of breweries, I mean, similar to us up until 2 years ago, that use mobile canners. And the mobile canning industry is just overwhelmed at this point. And I mean, even when we were mobile canning before, we had to make the decision whether to buy a larger brew system or a canning line. And thankfully, God, that we bought a canning line instead of a larger brew system in September of 2019. And then thankfully, and I can't imagine what breweries that are going through having to try to schedule mobile canning, or you have tanks sitting open or sitting full and waiting for a mobile canner for probably close to 6-8 weeks at this point. And that's just lost revenue. That's heartbreaking to think about. Like, anyway. So.
Yeah, just a side note too. I have a friend out in California who his dad owns a business called I believe it's called eFuel, and they can take alcohol and turn it into ethanol fuel. They have a system. And even he told me that they have they're at capacity. Like they've taken in so much alcohol that was going unused to process it into, pure ethanol or whatever for use in hand sanitizer and whatnot. That they needed people to buy the sanitizer that they were making because everything was at capacity. Because that was one of the first things I thought was I reached out to him and said, hey, here's an opportunity. You have all these kegs that are sitting out there that are just dead soldiers now that need a place to go. Can we get them to your facility? You can turn it into your pure ethanol and, off we go. You can make hand sanitizer or whatever.
And he was like, yeah.
he's like, I'd love to. I mean, if I could, I would, but we've gotten so much of it in, likely from, I presume, some of the bigger companies. So yeah, it's just, I mean, there's just nowhere for this stuff to go, right? You can't hit the pause button and expect this stuff to find a home.
Right. I mean, and even with hand sanitizer and stuff like that, you're not going to use as much hand sanitizer as you would beer. I mean, or wine or stuff like that. Yeah, I was talking to somebody at a major grocery chain who was like a store manager, and yeah, he said that they have like a lifetime supply of like hand sanitizer now, because they have like they have like hundreds of gallons of this stuff now for their internal use, but they're just like, it just keeps showing up for them to use. And I know it's still difficult to buy on the consumer market in little vials and stuff like that, but even that, it's starting to kind of trickle out. Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, who knows? Like, the question was like, what's it going to look like in the next 3 to 6 months? I think really like 3 months, everyone's like, I don't know. I have no idea what it's going to be like. But I think the scarier thing is like, what's it going to look like in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months?
Well, hopefully in 6 months, it's mostly gone, and we've all done our job and been good little
maybe.
soldiers.
Who knows, man?
I agree in 6 months, but I mean, following the CDC pretty closely and reading a lot of medical journals myself, like they don't see a vaccine happening for 36 months, honestly. At least that it's readily available for people. I mean, the antibody test they see in realistically 6 to 12 months of readily available. But then you look at the on-premise people that are wanting to open back up, that are wanting to make up for lost numbers. I mean, are they really going to carry craft beer, whose margins are much higher for them, when they could carry macro? Unfortunately, the number is they're going to probably carry something that makes them a higher percentage of money to make up for lost revenue than it is craft beer, despite where loyalties lie. And that's really just, it's not disappointing. It's just the reality, and I don't beget anybody for having to make up for those lost margins, unfortunately, but that's just kind of the reality of the situation. We are a higher cost brew, and I understand that. And I know that we're probably not going to be selling a lot of on-premise beer for quite a while. I'm thinking up to 12 months, just because there's a lot of places hurting right now that if they want to stay open, they need to make money, that unfortunately our price point won't be able to help them with that more than what others can. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that we haven't really talked about here too is the to-go business, the alcohol to-go business. There were these temporary exemptions for bars and restaurants to, facilitate to-go alcohol sales. I mean, in Massachusetts, it took a while. Pretty much every other state went forward and said, go ahead, sell your bottles of wine and your beer. But I think it's going to be really hard for us to go back from that now, which I think presents an opportunity for craft brewers, because I don't really have any interest, and I would suspect a lot of people probably don't have much interest in getting a 6-pack of Bud Light from, their local tavern or whatever down the street, their local neighborhood joint, if they're doing takeout. And if you start to play out the scenario of capacity limitations inside the physical premise and reservation systems that need to get set up, and, just kind of the backlog, because again, it's like anything else, capacity, right? If every restaurant is limited to 25 or 40% capacity and they all fill up around town, the only option is still to go. Well, you can't take away the privilege of selling your cans of beer to go at that point. So we might be seeing alcohol to go sales 6 months from now, when they thought it was going to be 30 days or 60 days of this stuff.
Oh, it could be for forever. I mean, some places there's signs. I don't know what the laws are in Chicago, but I know there's like chalk signs outside restaurants that they're basically like, you want some margaritas? We'll give it to you. Yeah. Here, just take. We'll make you any drink you want. Just take it. And it was like New Orleans or something, where you just like walk up and get whatever booze you want. And I remember, thinking at the time, like, I wonder how that's going to backtrack and if it'll backtrack. And I was on a call with somebody from like the Illinois hospitality. I don't know. He sounded like, I forget I don't want to talk too much because it was definitely a not on the record, or certainly not like to be broadcast, but sound like a lobbyist. But one thing he said was, he quoted Rahm Emanuel, and he said, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it was, never let a crisis go to waste, is what he said.
Geez.
And
That's so gross.
But he was saying, talking about, what we can do in the moment to help bars and breweries, get access to outside seating. And I mean, it wasn't necessarily gross in that sense, but it did kind of, I got like my eyebrow raised a little bit. But it was like, okay, can we push through this law and this law and this law? And it was interesting to hear people are already trying to have these changes made and have them stick for as long as possible. So it's really hard to know what it's going to look like in 12 months. I think some of these things are not just, they're going to come up with reasons why, for the health of the industry, we really need to keep it. Like with the airlines, how they had these extra fees that they needed to make up for, I don't know, fuel. I forget what it was when there was the airline crisis, and then those fees never went away, and it's probably, I think some of these things, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be in the restaurant and bar industries particularly, but are here to stay. And I'm curious how that's going to affect the overall on-premise and off-premise market.
Well, and it probably works both ways. I know that out in California, they're going to be requiring people to order a meal if they want to actually consume alcohol on premise. I don't know what you consider a meal in, like, Santa Monica. That could be like a pack of almonds and a hard kombucha or something, right? But I think that if you're saying to breweries who might have been able to get by with just having some snacks on hand, that they now have to make sure that they have a food truck there on site, and that anyone who wants to drink has to also order a meal with their beer. That's obviously not great for breweries, right? Because they just want to sell their beer at their beer garden or whatever.
That's funny. The guy who I was mentioning before mentioned a similar thing for Illinois, and he was already talking about how you could essentially get around that. I mean, it sounds like
around everything.
Yeah,
it's like
it's the Wild West now.
Right. It's like, oh, I have one of those like delivery kiosks in my bar. That's good enough. It was like the option to have food. And
well, in California, they're making them eat and
making them eat.
Drink.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it could go the other way, right? Like it could work for and against people.
Split a burger. Yeah.
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah.
I just think about like all the ways you could just kind of like bend the rules a little more, like health inspections and just, like, all that stuff that you can just kind of like, there's no way they're going to come up here and check this out. There's no way they can. There's no way that they can go and make sure that everyone is doing everything by the book.
Only person I know who's been busted has been this guy, and it was by the ILCC, the Illinois Liquor Commission or something. I don't even know what they're called. Control Commission came in, busted me because I had an illegal liquor promotion, and it was a raffle to give away a bottle of beer, and all the proceeds went to my unemployed staff. And it was $2 raffle, and I was just giving it to everyone who was furloughed, giving the money away. And the guy came in, was looking around, and everything was fine, looked at my invoice. He's like, so what's up with this raffle? And then I just knew and it was up. And so I got fined. I don't know how much yet. It's in their legal team's looking into it right now. So
what was
the things.
I have to subject here because what was their reasoning? Why was that illegal?
You're not allowed to give away alcohol. Alcohol cannot be a prize, and you cannot raffles specifically for alcohol. I mean, it was not allowed. You're not allowed to do it. But I thought it was like $2 raffles for a bottle of barrel-aged Abraxas. And it was, they came and, they obviously had no idea what was going on. I've talked about this on the show already, but they were like, so is this a beer you're having trouble moving? And how much you trying to move? I was like, it's one bottle of beer, man. And he's like, what distributor did you buy it through? And I didn't want to get into I didn't buy it through a distributor. This doesn't come through distributor. I didn't even want to get through it. I was like, I don't really want to answer that question. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. It was all me. I did it. This was all my idea. And, so they, I've gotten letters that, I'm going to be fined, but he was pretty understanding. He was sent out by his boss, and he had to do something about it, but he says, I'm going to try to write you up. And I know you're trying to just help people, but it is the Wild West, but there are people going out there. He had a mask on. He came in and was like, busted my ass. So anyway, you never know.
Rule breaker.
I'm a loner, a rebel. Why don't we take like a 5-minute break? I need to get another beer and maybe some water so I can be like all of you. And then we'll come back. I'll just keep the recording going, and then we'll come back in 5 or so minutes.
Put the kids to bed.
Yes.
Cool.
Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I am here with Libby, Crider, Chris Furnari, and Eric Buster Kapraun. Welcome back, guys. Hope you guys all are now hydrated and got drinks and everything like that. And Libby, you mentioned that I neglected to ask you what you were drinking.
We got
now you're ashamed.
No, we got really focused on New Claim, which I'm really excited about that you were drinking that. But I have been drinking Big Little Hop, which is the imperial version of our session.
Of Little Big Hop, right.
And it's the first imperial hazy beer that Steve has been comfortable in doing because he thinks they all taste like Band-Aids. So he's never been comfortable in doing one, and I think this one is delicious. But I'm the fangirl for everything my husband does.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that Steve Crider's now here.
Yeah, for a minute.
Yeah,
till the kids scream.
So the next thing we wanted to talk about, I think, is something that is near and dear to your heart, Eric. In one sentence, sum up what the future of large beer fests is going to be. Go.
There is no future.
Oh, okay. Moving on.
Wow.
No,
we could dissect that one all night.
I mean, honestly, I keep so. I went over to Manchester at the end of February and poured for Half Acre at Cloudwater.
UK. Yeah.
Yeah, in the UK at not in Tennessee, different Manchester. But I went and poured at the Cloudwater Friends of Family and Beer Fest, and I was coming off of a cold, and it seemed like the coronavirus wasn't really that prevalent in America or anything like that. But I started thinking about just how disgusting beer fests were. If you think about it,
oh, really?
Pandemic, just like the amount of a spider web that gets created with every single time you get a pour of beer. Let's say you had a germ, and then you handed it to the person working at behind the jockey box or whatever. you give them that germ, and then they give you your beer back, and then they could just like, I don't know, I just think about the exponential spread of something potentially at a beer fest. And I never really thought about it because it's just not a very sanitary way for people to consume beer, period. There's so much back and forth. There's so much close interaction. There's so much touching. Like you're always being given, you use the same glass throughout an event. I imagine that when bars, restaurants reopen, that everyone's going to be taking new precautions and new measures to make sure that there isn't anything that's like going, that the spread of potentially of germs or whatever is going to be minimized as best as possible, or as best that everyone can. So I just don't, in this climate that we're in right now, I just don't know what the future could look like. It could look like a lot less people, and everyone has to be a lot smarter about distancing and just the amount of back and forth that you're doing, but also potentially a lot more waste could be produced. If the solution to a beer festival not having a lot of back and forth interaction with passing things back and forth, it could mean that you're just going to be creating thousands of plastic cups that you're just going to be throwing away at the end of it. So it doesn't look very good, is what I'll say.
I think in the short term, I think you're probably very much right. I will say that I'm just like playing with whatever's like on this desk right now. I had a nail file. Now I have a flashlight. But anyway, I will say that people are very freaked out, rightly so, about it. But beer festivals and similar things, sporting events where you're giving somebody money and they're giving you a hot dog or a soda or stuff like that, have been happening for a long time. And unless there is a pandemic going on, it's relatively safe to do that. I hope we don't lose sight of that if there was it wasn't like, it's my opinion that it's not that COVID made us realize how unsafe we were. It was safe before COVID, and I think it will be, I hope, afterwards. I don't think that will make another pandemic happen. I think if there's a virus that is like that, we have to quickly stop doing those sort of things. But that's my hope anyway. And like I said, I own a bar. I'm not an epidemiologist, so.
Sure.
So I think
go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt, Eric.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
I think as just a brewery owner and someone that has put on beer festivals, I mean, this is just my personal opinion, but it's gotten pretty, can you go?
Kids.
Sorry, kids.
Can you leave?
Everybody didn't get a cold from the beer fest.
As far as recent years, in the past 5 years, I mean, how many beer fests can you absolutely contribute to? How many beer fests can you attend? It's gotten a little bit out of hand, in my personal opinion, about what beer fests are and what they truly mean. I mean, they started out when Steve and I first started dating. I remember him taking me to Portland's Beer Fest and just tasting a variety of beers, and just the camaraderie there. And it feels like since then every beer fest has been the same. So if we're able to weed out some of those, and this, I think
they need a reset. Beer, I would say that beer.
Yeah, I'm like an asshole. Like, I miss my husband. My husband is gone for 40 weeks out of 52 weeks of the year at beer festivals out of town, because they're what is necessary to promote the brand, to be out of the country, to be out of the state. Like, there's so many that we want to go to support our friends, but at what point is that breaking as far as financial and familiar? And I feel like this is going to be a really good reset. Maybe you don't invite 50 friends. Maybe you don't invite 60 friends. Maybe you focus on yourselves and what beers you're proud of. don't invite 1,000 people. Maybe you only invite a couple hundred people and make it special again, instead of just overblown, over the top. I mean, what is a beer festival anymore? That's what.
Yeah.
Well,
definitely.
it looks like you guys are having a little beer festival here.
Oh well, it wouldn't be a show if
Hey,
EdMar
guys.
didn't crash. I saw him sitting in the lobby of the Zoom, and
Yeah,
then he was texting me. I could almost see the puppy dog eyes. I could vision them of you not being able to just walk into the studio and crash it whenever you wanted.
I saw the Google Doc, and I saw that you sent a link out to people, and I'm like, you know what? This is my time. My time to crash Chris's show again.
Yes.
And I'm just glad to be here to crash it. And from what I just heard, I would agree with you about the festival stuff. And in fact, in the past year or so, we rarely have these kind of festivals with lots of different brands or breweries showing up, and we kind of limit the attendance to hundreds of people as opposed to thousands. I think we did a few things with a couple thousand people, and it was just insane. It's like you never even have a chance to talk to anyone at the festival. Yeah. It's just, what is the whole point of it if you can't even hang? It's like, there you are, there's your thing. Oh, I have to go run and put out this fire. But you know what? Not everybody has an Eric on their team to be the fire putter outer. Maybe that's what we probably needed at Mars on some of those larger fests. But yeah.
Yeah, I saw him. He had like that little McDonald's headset, kind of like what I have on now, and he'd be like running around and like, oh, sorry, there's a commotion over at the tattoo parlor that we have set up underneath the coconut tree made out of our empty 12 packs. But
Eric's got great ideas as fest. We've stole the little wiggly air buddy guy from
you
Eric.
Did steal that from him. Yeah,
but it's like, who doesn't want a little wiggle guy out in the
Let me talk a little bit about needing to reset fest, because I will say
I just want to say one thing real quick. The reason you try to fit as many people into the room or into the space as possible, as far as people buying tickets, is because you don't want to lose money. You want it to be an event and an experience that people can have and take with them. And the reality of the situation, for the most part, is putting on beer festivals and beer events. It is not cheap to do.
No,
to
it's
get
really expensive.
to do it right. I think you have to spend a little bit of money to make it great.
You break even, yeah.
You might, yeah, exactly. Hopefully break even.
Yeah.
So like where I'm a little pessimistic about it is I just see like a totally, you're right, it does have to change. It has to be a completely new reset situation and environment. And I think that, to what Libby was saying, is totally accurate. The reasons for why and who is in the room with you are what is going to matter more than the amount of events that there will be in Beer Fest.
Yes, I will say, please, Eric, you've said plenty now. Let me be pessimistic and complain, because that's really where I excel. As you know, what's been happening with they've becoming very. I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all, Libby, that Steve is away 40 weeks or something doing these fests, and they're all kind of feeling the same, because there's an outdoor festival season here in Chicago, and anyone from Chicago who's been here for any amount of time will know what I'm talking about. When there's certain ones that they're going to be the exact same. They're going to have the exact same vendors, and then they'll have these kind of like experiential things or whatever, but they're just like kind of pretty cookie cutter. And it does feel like there are breweries that are almost like on a circuit and there's different circuits, and there's even the international elite super cool circuit, where it used to be just the Copenhagen beer celebration, but now there's all sorts of other ones too. And now I don't want to name other ones because they're not individually, they're not bad. It's just they're all kind of collectively diminished when they're not unique anymore. And I think that's what's starting to happen, is everybody's having their invitational. Firestone Walker is still on my bucket list and was the first and still may be the greatest. But there's lots of invitationals now, and because it's a cool idea, and I do think it's kind of been watered down and it needs a reset.
I think, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think that breweries resetting, and instead of focusing on invitationals where we invite hundreds or dozens of other breweries, but focusing on yourselves, focusing on what made you a brewery, what made you want to brew beer, what brew did you want to brew that made you open up this brewery, what person did that, what people did that, and focusing small and going from there is going to be what really matters in beer festivals going forward. Because Beer Fest invitations have gotten so overblown. Like, we've attended so many, and I'm so thankful to be a part of a dozen of them that we shouldn't have ever been there. Like, Second Shift is just a blue collar brewery. Like, we should have ever been a part of them. But like, focusing on yourself, focusing on the beers that you're really, really proud of, and showcasing them instead of trying to bring in another brewery that brings in a beer that makes your Beer Fest worth attending, I think is my hope for a Beer Fest going forward from now. So
I think there are probably two questions that I would hope people ask themselves. It's really the same question, but two groups of people that people ask themselves after all this with respect to Beer Fest, which is, one, if you're a brewery that's participating in the Beer Fest, like what are you trying to accomplish by attending and exhibiting? To your point of not being able to see your husband 40 weekends out of the year because he's traveling the circuit. Well, like, what's the goal? Like, why are you trying to capture new consumers, introduce your brand to new people, like move a little bit of beer? Like, what's the goal? And then two, from the consumer side, consumers need to also ask themselves, like, why, like, what is my objective while I'm at this fest? Is it to try 40 different beers in a 2-ounce sample that I'm never going to remember? Or is it to go spend 2.5-3 hours with a close group of friends, and maybe I only try 3 beers because they're serving them in full pints or whatever, and I'm buying a ticket, but I'm having a really awesome time listening to a band, trying some food, hanging out, and spending 2.5 hours away. Yeah. And I think those two things can kind of help set what Beer Fest become after this. Because if it's the latter, right? If it's we're drinking cans of beer and you can only drink 2 of them or 3 of them or whatever it is, and you're having a fun time, that seems a lot more sanitary than 40 different exchanges of a 2-ounce glass, and it seems a lot more fun. So I don't know. I kind of that's how I would hope people start to reassess.
Chris, that's a great idea in terms of limiting the amount of beverages that are handed to people during this time that we live in. But just listening to you guys, I mean, one of the only ways I can ever leave town ever, because there's always work to do, is if someone invites me to a fest 6 months from now and I put it in the calendar and I can tell everyone and I get to go. And some of the greatest times I've had has been leaving town and going to a festival.
Yeah.
But I know that you might be having some fatigue because Steve, I mean, he's at a lot of festivals and it's helped build the brand. And of course you have your beer in a lot of different markets, so it makes sense to go to those markets. But I mean, some of the best vacations I've had were with festivals hosted by other breweries all over the country, all over the world, and some of those memories are some of my fondest, especially talking to the one trip we did, Chris, back in the 60s, going to Holland and and going to check out a weird beer fest and seeing the beer culture there and dealing and meeting all these weird European breweries you've never heard of. There's that kind of exploration thing. Yeah.
That's where that beer came from.
Yeah.
Dust, baby. Remember the Dust Brewers? Yeah.
But anyways, I think if you guys are talking about how do we do fests now, like in the next
Well,
year.
let me tell you something that happened today. I got a call from a guy, Ed, or everyone, who did big beer fests. I think he might have done one at a big venue, one of the a big venue here in Chicago, and that obviously wasn't happening. So now he was working on doing virtual festivals. I'm curious what you guys think of this. So his idea, and he's definitely not the first person I've heard with this kind of idea, is you get a ticket that gets you 12 different beers, one from 12 different breweries. I think local or something, I don't know. But then you can either pick them up at a location or they're sent to you. And then you have access to like a Zoom channel or some private channel or something like that. And there's maybe some talks from the brewers or
That's
I don't know what else
is doing.
Yeah, a lot of breweries.
So that, and then also some like pre-cut stuff. What's your like I said, I've heard other people doing it. This guy thought he was going to sell like 1,000 tickets to this thing.
Good for him. That's great.
And he was just talking to us about maybe helping out with some logistics. But
people are doing that, and I think the best model to follow is what Renegade Craft Fair has just done. Renegade Craft Fair sets up a site with all the different vendors, a link to like their who the vendors are, and then each vendor is doing like a live stream, and you can interact with them and talk to them while you click around at all the different vendors that you're looking at. And in the background, you could hear, like for example, Lumpen Radio was DJing this virtual event, and it allows people to be introduced to probably the brewers in this case, or the representatives of the brand, in a way they never have before and had that much time to even talk to people, because most guests that are going to a fest get like, maybe half a minute to say, oh my God, thank you for being here. I love your beer. Tell me about this beer. Or they're like asking you questions and they got to move on because the person behind them is like, yo, get out of the way. I need to get my beer.
I need my haze whale now.
Yeah. So
I got my untapped check-in preloaded.
How many adjuncts are in this?
Way.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, let me do what I do, which is to say, I don't know, man. If I was like that sort of a fest, I like the idea of people discovering things and talking to people and it being a way to actually be more intimate with someone than you could at an actual fest. But the idea of what it sounds like to me is like, I don't know, I'd rather go play a video game or something like that. I don't like, I wouldn't want to do like, so what do? I get a box and then I open up the beer and I just don't know if that sounds like something I want to do.
Chris, you have all the beer. So you're not the target for this. For someone who's already played video games, like myself.
Right. Maybe that's the thing. Like,
if you're into beer and you like
you're the Steve Crider of playing video games. You play it, 40 of every 52 hours.
40 weekends out of the year. Yeah.
Or I don't get to. Some of my greatest moments are memories or me being alone, having time to play a video game.
Yeah. Well, the thing is though, playing video games with other people is even more exciting, right?
They call that multiplayer, Ed.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that this will work, Chris. I think you'll be surprised. I mean, we have so much interest from people who want like a 4-pack from Mars they could buy, and there's a date where they can come in and talk to the brewer and talk about the beers and do a virtual tasting. That I think this is probably going to work.
That's different, though. That's different. I think that's a more intimate, targeted thing that I've been doing at the shop, and actually have started to think about focusing on doing brewery specific ones as well. And we thought about reaching out to you about this, Ed. We decided to go with someone else, but
yeah, I know.
I'm joking. But I'm thinking like 1,000 people. Eric,
I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, let's talk to. Let's listen to.
I mean,
Senor Dust.
From my experience, and I could be off base, and I think Chris, you're touching on it a little bit. People go to these beer fests and spend the money to be there because they want something that they can't get or that they never had, or they want the rarity or the exclusivity or whatever. And I think that when you just like have this like more prepackaged version of it, it's just not as enticing to people, and it's almost, it might be too accessible.
It's not spontaneous.
Yeah, and also like you can't, like, this is so bad to say, but like you can't laugh at your buddy for like, you know, coming out of the porta potty and like, oh man, you got pee on your leg or whatever it is. It's like, you know, all the dumb stuff and all the like sort of ancillary fun that comes with going to these events, just like, it's just not the same when you're doing it in person. And I think that when you have that like appointment on your calendar, when you're going to, you know, you buy a ticket for a beer fest, and you're like, I'm going to this and it's great. And the ambiance is there and you get really pumped up and excited about it. I could be totally wrong, but I just don't see people geting as revved up about it to do it when they're sitting
now that I think
at
about
the
it.
computer.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to be excited about it. No one's going to want that to replace a real festival that's interesting. But in terms of what you can do now, while
For
5
sure.
months, 6 months go by, something like that might be novel in a sense.
Yeah,
of,
if it's novel, that's what I was going to say. Also, Ed, is I could see it. You said you'll be surprised. I think it's going to work. And what I was going to say before Libby rudely suggested we listen to somebody else and get somebody else's opinion.
Sorry.
How dare you ask for somebody else's opinion who does that, you know, professionally for a long
Used
time.
to.
Yeah, did that. Thank you for correcting me. Was, you know, you'll be surprised people do it, but will they do it again? Like, is it purely novel? I don't know. I mean, I guess I would try it. You're right, and see how it works. And there might be funny things. You can see some of the other people there, and be like, "Look at that dude. He's wearing a pretzel necklace."
Yeah, and also remember,
sitting in his downstairs guest bedroom. And
Chris, what people are doing with Zoom right now, they're having these conferences. Of course, people are familiar with this in the corporate, you know, universe. But you're able to make breakout rooms. You're able to do presentations. You're able to do so much in terms of like.
Well, that's what this guy's going to do. He's going to do breakout.
I mean, there's a lot of preparation to actually do this as much as a festival in terms of preparing the media, preparing video content that you might present. You might have simultaneous tents or rooms to go to in which you'll experience something. So it actually has been done pretty well. It's very difficult to do on a technical side. So you'll need a really great team of people to manage those streams, manage the green rooms, manage like where people are going to be talking. Like, who wouldn't want to hear, like, hey, every hour there's an interview with a different brewer by Chris, you know? And by the way, you know, hopefully you got your 12-pack. What are you drinking right now? If you want to go to some rooms where people are listing guest rooms and chat rooms where they want to go, and then you could see them with their giant pretzel on and whatever outfit they're wearing that they normally would. People are wearing crazy crap on their little cocktail happy hours already on these video chat the video interface right now with the chat rooms and Zoom or whatever, Google Hang. And I'm just trying to tell you, man, it's a way probably people will connect more and have more conversations than they would at a fest. It's just gonna happen.
So,
but you're right. How many of those it's not going to be like everyone who's doing a festival will be able to do this, right? It'll be possible. You'll have to be a big producer.
A couple of things, Ed, you're exactly right on the breakouts. You know, my girlfriend actually does event planning for a tech company, and they just had an event yesterday, and it was all day event, and they had a bunch of breakouts, and it's kind of checking some of it out. Like, well, what happens if you click on, you know, that room sponsored by Microsoft or whatever? And, you know, there's somebody in there talking, answering questions, doing all that. So oddly enough, I think an event like GABF, for instance, which is massive and has all these people and is like almost like overwhelming and overstimulating, I think it, like, the BA is going to be pivoting online now. I think it'll actually go quite well. Because there's a passive element to all this and there's a tactile element, right? So you get
let me interrupt you. That passive element is, think about this. Millions of people just watch other people play video games and never say anything to anyone. Right. People want to just observe. Imagine if everyone could have access to, of the beer conference panels live. But anyway, sorry to interrupt. But
Well, like, you can choose to engage as much as you want. So if you want to, if there's 12 beers and they're tasting through the beers, you could skip a couple of them if you wanted, right? Like, there's no pressure to drink all the beers. You can pop into the rooms that you want. I mean, it's really a choose your own adventure. So I think there's a lot of things that are working for the idea of bringing a beer fest online and taking it virtual.
And I would even argue that a brewery such as one of the bigger breweries here in Chicago, if they were to organize this kind of thing with the breakout rooms and offering interesting content, interviews with the guest brewers, et cetera, it's possible to have the same break-even thing going on. It'll cost a lot to produce, but people might purchase all those beers in advance to taste for that fest and be part of something. I don't know. It'll be really great to see how that guy does that, Chris. And then Chris, that conference that your wife was part of, the event planning thing, I know plenty of people do that. We did a festival about a month ago called the Common Field Festival, of people who are part of alternative art spaces from around the world and do art programming, and they're independent nonprofits. And we hosted like concerts for them. We programmed concerts for them. We hosted Check Out Chicago's art scene through Zoom things and through a video presentation, which everyone could watch on Zoom, of what the Chicago's art ecology looks like. And people dug it. It wasn't massive, but people got an overview of what the hell was going on. So someone's going to figure this out. And you're right. Probably the Brewers Association is going to figure out something interesting for us in the future.
Yeah, I think conference. Yeah.
And one more point, Ed, you brought up the issue of breweries breaking even. If it's somebody like, a third party like the BA that's hosting it, it's actually probably more cost effective for a brewery to participate in something like this, because they don't have to send anybody anywhere. They really just, all they got to do is, get the beer to a location through these packages. And they're probably, if it's the BA, they're probably going to partner with someone who's responsible for handling the logistics on all of that. So really, it's like, I feel like it's going to be a win for brewers, who can commandeer a person, 400, 500 people's time in a room for 30 minutes to tell them about their brand. Captive audience. I mean, it's great, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be interesting for consuming information, or maybe, for consuming information and learning stuff. I think it could be good, like a conference setting. I don't know if a pure festival, maybe we're calling them festivals, but maybe they're no longer truly beer fests as we have experienced them in the past, because what everyone has said is their favorite part about it is largely non-existent, at least from the industry side. Some of your favorite memories being from the beer fest, a lot of those would probably go away, Ed. But from a consumer standpoint, if you can easily have access and learn things and have breakout sessions, I think it's just a reinvention of what a festival is. I mean,
information and learning goes way up, networking and peer-to-peer engagement goes way down.
Yeah. However, I could see these breakout rooms becoming hot trading centers. I could see the people are just, what are you drinking? Going? Like, it's gonna boost the resale economy, like, in ways we've never imagined.
Oh my God. Can't wait.
I was at the Burials Burn Pile Fest a few years ago, and then even at the Cloudwater Festival that I was at in February. I think that seeing those like off-site, or like maybe not part of like the main event, like breakout conversations and talks with brewers, those were super well attended, and people were super psyched about that. I think
what were they? They were just like, what were they? They were just like a topic.
It would depend, but yeah, it would be like a topic specific to a brewery, or to like three brewers that were there, or something like that. I think that the part that I just have the most trouble with is like the tangible aspect of it. It's like, yeah, the conversation part, obviously very important. And then you can have like a back and forth dialogue. But I feel like such a big component of those usually is like, okay, cool, I'm going to pour you some beer, and this is what's going to make this great. I'm going to talk about this beer.
It's breaking bread in a way,
Sure.
That's kind of
I feel like that always makes it feel special. And maybe that's entirely possible. It'll just have to be in a different way.
Let's talk a little bit, unless there's something else that we need to talk about festivals, about consumer buying habits, and if anybody has noticed any change generally. Yeah, what's up, Libby? You raised your hand.
So we sat on roughly 1,000 cases of Saison. I don't know if you saw from your distributor that distributes to you, of a Belgian style Saison, the raspberry version, hibiscus version, and the lemon version. We had roughly 1,000 cases when we started basically the pandemic, and we quickly shifted to it to go, and we were down to 0. So what people are buying when they don't think other people are watching has been incredible to me. Saisons has been like our go-to, and we've sold out of them month after month after month after month, and God bless y'all, because I have been calling it the summer of Saisons for 4 years now, and I am so thankful. So yes,
wild.
Buying habits when people think that other people aren't watching has been really, really interesting. So
Ed, I was texting with you and a few other people today about how perplexed I was in a way about what's been the breakout success at my store, which has been this beer that's in my hand right now, actually, the Rathaus Pils, which is a $14.99 German, like imported, not German in style, but German in origin Pilsner. It's insane. It's crazy. We sold 50 cases last week. We've sold 200 cases in 2.5 months, which is something that I don't think we've ever done for any beer ever. Because even if we could move that beer would, I guess, go away, but we can get this beer back in.
But Chris,
I don't know what's going on with it.
I would argue, though, Chris, is because, in these times we're living, someone like the Beer Temple and the brand that you've built, and the fact that you're doing these kind of videos and discussions about these beers and talking about your favorite beers, people want to share that experience of hanging out with you at Beer Temple. And when you recommend something like that, they're going to listen to you because you're a trusted source of like knowledge on what's happening. So what you should be really thinking about is the fact that you've been very successful at trying to help people understand that there are these different products out there, and that your passion for this beer that you've talked about for years, which is now available because you're the only guy who actually gave a shit forever, and you've been telling people, and now we got it, and now you should have it. So to me, that's part of the trend. Those brands, those organizations, the companies, the bottle shops that you trust, trying to find stuff that you'll enjoy is really important to your guests and your consumers. So I think, you should applaud yourself, even though I know you do that every day.
You were saying that before when we were texting. I kind of pushed back a little bit. I'm going to push back a little bit more. Thank you. Thank you for the sentiment. I have a question for you, Libby. Were the 1,000 cases that you guys sold of Saison, was there an online component to any amount of those purchases? Were they initiated online, or was it just people knocking on your door and saying, bring it out to me, please?
I really don't know. None of our beer was available online before all this happened. To be completely honest, I saw the shift happening probably about a week before it hit St. Louis, and then the moment that it hit was the Sunday before St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
And it was literally like the feet were swept up underneath us. We're going to do this now. We're going to do this now. We're going to do this now. And so we put everything online, available within a week. And I didn't even bother to notice how different our sales were before like a month. And then noticed that like our Blackberry Farm collab Wannabe, which we had 100 cases of, oh my God, we're sold out of it.
But you know,
Right.
Libby, it's another testament.
It's how easy it is to buy it now is an element of it.
And that was kind of my point, is like what people want to buy in their own personal time in front of other people is very different. Like, I think.
But I would also argue, Libby, that it's also because people love your brewery and they don't want to fucking go under. And it doesn't matter what you sell. It doesn't matter what you fucking make, and they're just gonna buy it because they believe in you guys. And everyone's making personal choice of who they're supporting right now. Who are they recirculating their money to? And people do that based on this kind of like affinity and love for the people they've worked with, the spaces they've gone to. So you guys have been really great in terms of like being community organizers, and you've been really amazing in what you do. So you could sell a Saison, you could sell whatever, a Rauch beer, you could sell whatever the hell you want. It's going to sell out. All right. I mean, that's basically what's going to happen for you guys. Now, it's also based on your volume. Maybe you have only an audience of several thousand people who are just going to buy whatever the hell you make. The larger breweries are having probably a difficult time. I mean, but at the same time, the larger breweries are able to keep the channels going. They're able to keep this beer in the pipeline and keep it stocked in stores. And those are the breweries that are keeping all the shelf space. Those are the breweries that are able to maintain those regular, familiar brands that you're aware of. You know, you can always drink this.
Pipe fill, baby.
Yeah. So they're really feeling that right now.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, Libby, is that Saison something that you guys make like all the time?
It was something we made on a regular basis until we kind of started to see a backup of it, and that it wasn't really popular as far as to-go sales. I don't know how much.
Katie?
No, Libby.
No. Katie
Oh.
and Bridget have always been fine. Chris, I don't know how much you know about our brewery, but my husband and I are constantly at odds. He brews the beer. I constantly tell him how wrong he is. So he
sounds like a couple.
So we started this line of Belgian style Saisons. He's in love with De La Seine. He wanted to brew beer like De La Seine and wanted to release
brewer's beer, man. Every brewer does. Yeah.
But he wanted to release it in St. Louis, and he released all of a sudden 1,000 cases without really giving me any sort of like preemptive being able to promote it. And all of a sudden we're sitting on these 1,000 cases. So I definitely foresee us brewing the beer again, but
you have me at De La Seine, we'll buy some.
So then are you able to track repeat purchasers at all?
Yeah, we are definitely, because of the Square Store, through Square Store, we're able to use Weebly. We had over a 800% new buyer for just our Saisons alone, which is insane. Like, to me,
that's insane.
Well, do you think that has to do with you being vocal online and talking about the reality of the situation and how it's impacted your business? Because I mean, for me, reading about it from Chicago, you know, I think that being very honest and forthcoming about how this has affected you guys and your brewery, like, you know, that's the reality of the situation. Like, for me, it's like, you know, it's heart-wrenching as someone who's had such a, you know, I've been impacted by it, obviously, but, you know, the amount of skin that I have in the game is so much smaller than you guys do. And I think that seeing you being very honest about your story and how it's impacted you and your relationships with your employees and all that, like it's been, you know, it's been, I don't want to say it's been good to read it, but it's been nice to see somebody be honest. Yeah. Be real about the situation and how it's affected.
It's cathartic.
So I think that I would imagine a lot of people that may not have known about you guys or about your beer before saw that and reacted to that.
And it might be cathartic for you, Libby, but I think it's it's touching for other people. I don't think it's cathartic for them. Yeah.
So to be completely honest, Steve is really against me being as vocal as I am. But for me personally, being as an emotional person as I am, and I mean, it took me a while to realize that I wasn't the only woman who felt talked down upon at Beer Fest. I wasn't the only woman who felt talked down upon as far as beer, and sharing that, and then feeling now that I am now a comrade. I'm not just another person in beer. Like I can hold my own has been really self-empowering. And then being vulnerable is a part of the human cathesis.
Yeah.
All of us have our vulnerable parts. And if we don't share them in some way, shape, or form, then it outlets in some way. And this pandemic has definitely shown me, like, I'm gonna lost for words. Like, I just know that being able to share what we're going through makes somebody else feel like they're not alone has made me feel better.
I appreciate all your how local you are, right, Libby? Like the way you're describing what's happening in Missouri, the way that the government was opening up businesses, and the way you responded those are the kind of that's the kind of guidance the industry needs. Those are the kind of things that people need to hear when we're making decisions, because we're really just overwhelmed with garbage, and we're overwhelmed with pressure to sell, and we're overwhelmed with how do we get our businesses back, and how do we employ all our people. And you're articulating things that aren't really well known, that people don't want to share. They want to just say, like, you know what, we're doing what we're doing, we're trying to do what we're doing, and you are very vocal about it. I mean,
no, this is bullshit. Like, going back to what Chris said, like, there are certain states opening up that we don't feel comfortable with, and when you don't feel comfortable, like, you need to share it. Like, the reason that we're small businesses because we're family, and like, you need to be able to share that, and you need to not be able to feel like you're gonna offend somebody. Like,
of course I agree with you there.
Let me, I think this is a very good time for me to share an email that came in. This email came in from Bill Gegenheimer on April.
Hi, Bill.
Oh, you know it.
I know,
okay.
Bill. Yeah.
Okay. This came in April 12th. It says, and he says, "Hi, I've been listening to your show for a long time, and I must say that your most recent show with Doug, Randy, and Dan was one of the best ever. Listening to you folks struggling in almost real time with how to deal with this pandemic and the human aspect was so very real. If I may make a suggestion, check in on Libby Crider at Second Shift. I know you've had both Steve and her on the show many times. Even though they're struggling, she's putting together care packages for folks in the community just to brighten their day a little bit. Folks from all over have been, quote, ordering beer on their website to make a contribution to help with this effort. My wife and I did this, even though we have never visited St. Louis. We were going to visit for the I Am a Craft Beer event that Second Shift was hosting, but, well, you know. Also, I'm trying to support some other local breweries here in Las Vegas, in the Las Vegas area, as much as I can by ordering curbside pickup. Hope my liver forgives me. Good luck to you and yours. Since our daughter and son-in-law live in Chicago when this is over, we hope we can visit them and stop by the Beer Temple. Best, Bill Gegenheimer." So I did not know that you knew Bill, but I thought that was fitting considering what we were talking about, and also fitting that, you know, people are taking notice of what you've been saying, Libby, and what you've been doing too. Your actions down in St. Louis, even for someone all the way out in Nevada. So pretty unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
But yeah, I think we need to hear more voices from other people, right? We need to hear more businesses talk about what they're struggling with as well. And I think by you doing that, you allowed other people to feel more comfortable with doing that. So that's really great. I mean, I don't know if you remember this, like a month and a half ago, the BA was saying 60% of breweries thought they would close by July. I'd like to know what an update is. You know, I'd like to know what the hell the stats are right now. How many breweries feel that they're really going to go under. I have a feeling that the majority will not, and that the ones that are going to go under are the ones that should have just gone under anyways. I think that people who love craft beer and love the communities that are created around those spaces and those the brands are supporting them more than they ever have in the past, in ways that many people will never know about. And I think you need to tell those stories. And that letter that came in is a great example of how people are behaving all over the world, all over this country, in terms of supporting those companies that mean a lot to them. And what means a lot to people and brands are the people that work at those brands. It's not just the fucking beer. It's about you, and it's about Steve. Otherwise, your brand is bullshit.
Okay.
Is there anyone else in the building that needs to get on the camera before the show's almost over? Is there any other living thing that needs to get on?
We have 3 cats. I probably won't, but this is Lucy. This is my girl. All right.
I got a picture. I mean, this is my basset hound I had when I was a child.
Lucy, get down.
I certainly hope you're right, Ed.
I have this unicorn
in your project.
Awesome.
Well,
Chris, I'm very fond of your air filter.
My air filter?
No, other Chris. Sorry.
My fan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I missed a lot of the show because I was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But Chris, what the hell's going on by? I just want to know, and I know I've just derailed your closing statements, Chris. What the hell's going on by you, man?
I would be shocked if you hadn't done
do that at least
anyway.
twice. Yeah.
Are
you feeling well? Are you feeling well, Ed?
You didn't interrupt me.
What do you want to know?
In terms of like how is it? Where are you living right now?
I'm in Marblehead, Massachusetts now.
Yeah, and how's Massachusetts handling reopening the economy, reopening business?
Literally, the first half of the show is this, but we can.
Yeah.
You know what? I could check in later, but are you feeling okay about it?
I'll give you the Cliff's notes. I mean, our governor basically got a failing grade, but I think that's because he's actually doing a pretty good job. He's taking it very slow. So the people who want to see the businesses, start to get rolling, they're not too happy. So yeah, like restaurants, most of life gets going 3 weeks from now, supposedly, but our initial reopening is happening on Monday. It seems like, most of the breweries around here have, adapted pretty well. A lot of them were either self-distributing, selling cans. Cans are very popular in the Northeast. So, a lot of direct, 4-pack sales. So for the most part, I haven't.
Are people putting like sex dolls in lawn chairs outside of the doors to line up?
Only at Tired Hands.
Okay. That was a bad joke. Sorry.
What I am seeing now, though, like more so every day, I'm seeing a lot of the restaurants just kind of throw up their hands and say, like, we're done. I feel like probably, maybe a week ago is when I started to see one here, one there. And then now it's like slowly coming into Boston, where it's like restaurant names that I know because I've been there or I've driven by it or seen it. And they're like saying we're closing for good.
That's not good.
So I don't know what that means for breweries, because I would suspect that breweries are probably like, the taproom specific ones are probably pretty close behind there. So to your point of 60%.
And it's going to be the same curve that you saw the COVID take. It's going to be slow, and then it's going to go like this as stuff goes on. And I hope you're right, Ed, but I also don't think that I think it's also going to have a long tail. I think there's going to be things that people are going to try to overcome, and it might take a year, but they just won't be able to overcome it. These are my fears, really. I don't want this to be the case, but I think this is going to be a long time before we see the full effect of this in the industry. What's up, Eric?
I was just thinking about, like, what if you just spent what if you just spent a ton of money expanding your brewery? You lost
Well, yeah.
50% of your everything. Your potentially your on and off premise revenue.
The Saturday before.
You just described night shift.
They canceled that project too.
Yeah, Isaac is a friend, and he's one of the head brewers. Like, they canceled everything.
Yeah.
Jerry.
Were they able to cancel? But they were able to cancel it. I mean, I'm not saying that makes it okay, but
they're walking away is what the
So Eric, the day before, the Saturday before parade day, when shit was hitting the fan, I mentioned this a few episodes back as well. My wife was not comfortable with me doing it, but I felt I needed to do it. Ed, I know you did as well. Fucking, of all the people, Jerry Nelson, opening day of his brand new huge expansion. It was the Friends and Family Day.
Yep.
And fuck, man. So that answers your question. Like, well, Jerry, a huge new place. But like a 20 times bigger than his current space type thing.
It's like 30,000 square feet, 4,000 square foot tap room.
Full restaurant.
He's smoking meats. He opened up. I've talked to Jerry. You should get him back on the show. He seemed like he was okay. He was ramping up his brew schedule. Like, I don't know about you, Libby.
I will have him back.
I missed the earlier part of the show. Did you shut down production for a second?
No.
Well, good for you. We did, and that really fucked things up for us. We're finally catching up. We don't make enough beer anymore at Mars.
That's awesome, Ed. Good.
Yeah. Well, we have one of your alumni working for us, Mikey Manning. Without him,
I know.
Without Mikey, this brewery would be dead. But yeah, in terms of like
pastry king of Chicago,
he is the pastry king of Chicago. But the thing is, you talk about expansion. Like, I think I'm the only asshole and moron who's actually opening up another brewery and tap room in Chicago,
and a restaurant,
and opening up another restaurant. I'm opening up 2 businesses, and we're opening up our retail location in the cultural center downtown on Michigan Avenue. So I'm opening up 3 businesses in the next few months.
Good for you.
Complete idiot.
Yeah, good for you. I'm working on an expansion too.
I know. I'm being serious.
I'll stay hush about that.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Double down.
Appreciate it.
I'm
just like, you know what? I want to make sure everyone gets back to work. I want to make sure that our employees have a job, and we rely on. We have to thank our community that we work with to make it happen. So, that's just basically it. But it's also based on like, I already spent all this money trying to figure this out. We got completely, blindsided. Well, we could just sit on this and do nothing, or just try. And I'm so used to failing, I don't really give a shit anymore. Like, fine, who gives a fuck? Oh, it didn't work out. Big fucking deal. Do the next thing.
Eric, before we leave, Eric, what's going on with you?
What do you mean?
What do you have in the sidelines? What do you need? Can I help you?
Oh, no. Well, thankfully, the Illinois unemployment finally came through. So for the time being, I'm all right. I think I'm worried more about my sanity in being home every day.
Did you work on your metal show?
I need to. I got the new computer in this week, so I can actually start
all right,
on that. But yeah, I'm trying to start a modern rock radio hour rather than a station on Lumpin' Radio, because oddly in Chicago there's no good music.
Don't reach out to me with that shit.
Okay. No.
Just like if you need help, like if you need anything.
Yeah, it's there's 40 million people like me who had who had this sense of normalcy in February and thought that life was going to be the same in June. And that's not the case. I'm grateful for being healthy and the time I had in the industry and everything like that. I mean, it's changed me so much as a person, but I take a lot of solace in the fact, going online and seeing a lot of people who had jobs that they just don't exist anymore, and they probably won't exist anymore, or at least in the way that they did. my wife always says that I'm going through a grieving process with that. And that's probably true. Maybe I just haven't accepted the reality of what it is, but I'll be all right. I really appreciate it, but hopefully there will be a day when things get back to normal. And until then, I'll spend a lot of time with my dog reading books, making tie-dye t-shirts.
Until Wisconsin again.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were one of those tie-dye guys.
I am now. Why not?
I got a gig for you. How many can you rock out?
Let's talk after the show.
All right.
Nice. Well, the breakout session.
Yeah.
Just AKA once this thing ends, I just say, okay, it's over. But this thing.
Yeah. I think
there you go, Eric. Start your own virtual beer festival.
Yeah, you're an experiential guy.
Yeah, I don't know if I was going to say the same thing, Chris, and I don't know if he wants to do that, but I know
what'll happen is, he'll give you the experiential thing, so that you'll get the beer, but then there'll also be some like brownies in there, and then accidentally you'll be like, oh, that was for a group of 12, the amount you just ate. Whoops. It'll just be like, like good old times.
Yeah. Listen, cannabis is essential in Illinois, so
right.
Yes, it is.
Only medicinal.
That's pretty funny.
So that's something that I don't want to go off a tangent here, but coming into 2020, what we kept wondering was what makes an event like a beer fest. Like we at Half Acre we did one called the Big North. We did it for 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
What are the people who buy a ticket for that? What is their
they buy it for the
tier of their
performance by
priorities?
Ruben Kincaid. I mean, they buy it because they know Ruben Kincaid's showing up and doing a performance.
Ruben will be there. There's karaoke. Is it the beer? Is it the music? Like, what is it?
Eric, I completely agree. Like, that was kind of my point. Like, what's the point of holding a fucking beer fest? Like,
sure.
What is the point these days?
What we were wondering 6 months ago was when people buy this ticket, what do they actually care about? And
it's a combination. It's a combination because, like, my wife would come to Half Acre events because they were cool. She didn't give 2 shits about the rare beers that would go on and go off, but other people did because they go on and go off.
What made it cool for her? What made it cool for her? That's my question. Like,
karaoke room.
Half Acre was very good at experiential and always has been.
You didn't even know what's going on there. Like, I didn't even know I could do archery or throw axes at people. I had no clue.
I mean, they literally did have on the brew deck one year, just like tattoo artists. You just walk in and they're like, what is that? I'm like, oh, that's just, we have a tattoo artist. You can go get some tattoos. And then I saw one guy who got his first tattoo ever
at Half Acre
there. And he was like, hey, look, it's my first tattoo ever. And he pulled up his sleeve and I was like,
yeah. Cool. But also, like, the community of Half Acre performs. The bands that are part of the team are actually playing. So they're sharing what they do, what the people in that brewery actually do in their other gigs, right? Their creative life, and that's actually really important too. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, everyone in the screen right now would hire Eric to do whatever the fuck Eric wanted to do if we could. We're all ready to ask you to do whatever the fuck you want. You're like an amazing human being. Everyone here is, but like, you're what made craft beer in Chicago, buddy. You made people understand what it could be. You did. You are. You helped you fucking drew the line of what a good event was. How not to do a shitty fucking beer fest. You're the guy. Your wrestling prowess and interest in it drove independent wrestling through the roof in the past 3 years. There's 3 out of 5 people here who never heard of this wrestling federation that you guys go. I was going to make beers for every wrestler. I mean,
true.
You have a lot of impact. You have a lot of impact in what you do, and that's you should accept that. Just whatever. I don't give a fuck.
All right, I think that might be a good closing.
Chris, it was really nice to meet you.
Which me?
Yes.
That's right. You
yeah. So why don't we go around? I'll go
Yes.
from me. We'll go around this way. We'll go Eric, Chris, Ed, and then Libby. Anything you want to say before we end the show officially, Mr. Kapraun?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything in particular. Just take care and be safe, be smart. Think about everyone else. Don't just think about yourself. That's really what I think matters the most right now. That might be a little preachy, but I really mean it. So yeah, take care.
Chris?
Well said. Well said. Yeah, the other night I did one of these Zoom things with a bunch of graduating seniors from my college, Santa Clara University. And every year they get to go to these events called Life After SCU. And one of them is a beer thing where they learn about beers, and my buddy's a part of it. So I brought some beer people in, and we talked about beer, and I said, listen, they posed this question at the end, what's your closing thoughts? I said, listen, I graduated from college in 2008, recession. It sucked. Uncertainty sucks. It's not fun at all. But I'm still here. We're all still here. We all lived through that. So that was my message to them. So I'd sort of kind of reframe it for this podcast, which is we've all lived through this type of thing before. Maybe not to this extent, but we're all still here. So, smart people figure it out. They make things happen. And I feel like that's the majority of the beer industry. That's the majority of our peers. So just have faith that you're going to figure it out, and we're all going to be okay. In a year or two from now, we're going to look back on this and say, man, what a wild time that was.
I certainly hope so. Ed?
Yeah, I'm with you, Chris. I think that's a great sentiment. I think it's just part of my personality, but I constantly try to figure out what we can do. How do we look at best practices elsewhere? How do we talk to each other and try to figure out what we want to do during these incredibly weird times? And essentially, it's basically just taking care of each other, and we can only do this together. So if we do this together, we're going to figure it out.
And Libby, anything you would like to say?
To repeat, Ed, compassion and empathy is going to be everything. And if you're a woman in craft beer, fuck the men that tell you you're not worth anything. And fuck you men that try to keep women down. Sorry.
Amen.
Sorry. For all of those people that are trying to get in craft beer, do not be scared. Ask the questions. We're here to help you. This is not the wrong time to try to get into any sort of, anyway. There you go.
We're done.
Okay. All right. I don't have much to say in closing.
What a surprise.
Well, I was going to say something.
Sorry, my dog came in and I completely got distracted.
I've decided to hold off on my announcement that I was going to make. I want to thank all you guys.
Hanging, Chris.
That's right. It's supposed to be like that. I'm building it up. Yeah.
You don't have an announcement. I don't believe it.
No, I do.
Okay.
Oh, come on.
But
dude.
I've literally
hold on.
No. I've been rethinking my announcement, and I cannot make the announcement until I'm ready to make it. So,
all right.
I was going to do it, but I've decided not to.
You switched from sports video games into sci-fi fantasy video games?
Ed, just because I told you. Yeah.
All right. Hey, let's just get it out there. All right?
Yeah. All right, fine.
You're looking forward to the cyberpunk video game of the future that's coming out. Fine.
All I'm saying is, how you like my hoodie? So thank you to everyone for taking time out of your evenings and joining me. I know this is not the typical way that you guys experience the show, with the exception being you, Chris. I think.
But you know what,
is
Chris?
Typically how you experience the show.
If you can figure this out, Chris, we'll be able to broadcast again. If everyone stops saying "fuck" all the time, all right?
Yeah, I mean, I could. Yeah, I just lost interest in how to. The Twitch was only giving my audio, but I didn't care to try to.
You didn't want to fix
it.
it.
I didn't care.
Yeah.
But thank you guys, and
yeah,
that's it. We'll see you next time on the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable.
Yeah. Great to see you guys.
Take care.
Cheers.
All right.
Everyone be good. Everyone take care.
Oh, and that's the end of the show. All right.
Bye.
All
right.
See ya.
Hey, by the way, Ed.
Yeah.
Your videos that you do on Facebook where you put that thing around your neck and you do the karaoke thing.
Karaoke.
Can you just keep doing those? Like, can you?
Oh, thanks, Chris. Everyone asks me, and I just have there's no one to shoot them. I feel like I shouldn't be without a mask and singing, and then but maybe I'll do it with a mask with someone.
Yeah, you can do it with a mask, right?
Because we're all socially distant in a way, but
set up your phone on a tripod or something. I don't know.
I think I can record a video.